feudalism in the last 600 years, feudalism and other forms of dictatorships. In the fight for freedom from oppression of man by fellow men, it is important to remember what the Bible teaches us. In the book of Acts of the Apostles, chapter 17, verse 26, it goes as follows. And he has made from one blood every nation of man to dwell on all the face of the earth, and has determined their pre-appointed times and the boundaries of their dwellings, so that they should seek the Lord in the hope that they might grope for him and find him. I close quotes. Therefore, Your Excellencies, nations and the boundaries of those nations are the work of God, and nobody should interfere with the work of God. Imperialism is therefore a heathen, unchristian idea. Therefore, in the fight for the emancipation of man from oppression of man by fellow men, we should respect the choices of the different nations and countries. The Bible again states in the book of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 16, I open quotes, "Let your light so shine before men that seeing your good deeds, praise our Father in heaven," I close quotes. In other words, influence people by example and not by coercion, manipulation, etc. Your Excellencies, bearing the foregoing in mind, you can see the relevance of the BRICS effort. It is aghast with fresh air that after 600 years of slave trade, colonialism, genocides, imperialism, neocolonialism, aggressions, etc., a group has come up to illuminate a new way for human race, a new way that insists on justice, equality of people, and respecting independence of people and countries. Uganda therefore supports the effort of the BRICS countries, and at the right time, we will want to join. I thank you, Your Excellencies. Signed, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, President of the Republic of Uganda.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice President. I now invite His Royal Highness Sheikh Saud bin Saud Mohammed Al-Qasimi, member of the Federal Supreme Court of the United Arab Emirates, ruler of Ras Al Khaimah. You have the floor. You will be followed by Botswana. Botswana, be ready.
فخامة سيريل رامافوزا رئيس جمهورية جنوب أفريقيا، أصحاب الفخامة والمعالي رؤساء، عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أود في البداية أن أشكر فخامة الرئيس سيريل رامافوزا على التنظيم الناجح وكرم الضيافة التي تلقيناه من حكومة وشعب جنوب أفريقيا. نحن نقدر موافقة قادة مجموعة بريكس على ضم الإمارات العربية المتحدة إلى هذه المجموعة الموقرة. وفي السنوات الأخيرة واصلت دولة الإمارات سعيها للحصول على العضوية في المنظمات الدولية، ملتزمة بتعزيز الحوار والتعاون الاقتصادي الدولي. إن نهجنا يقتضي الاستمرار في بناء الجسور والتعاون من أجل إيجاد الحلول للتحديات الأكثر إلحاحاً التي تواجه عالمنا، مثل تغيير المناخ والفقر، والحصول على الرعاية الصحية والتعليم للفئات الأكثر ضعفاً في مجتمعاتنا، والعديد من الفجوات التنموية الأخرى كما يجب علينا أن نغتنم الفرصة للتواصل مع الدول والشعوب في هذه المجموعة وخارجها لتحقيق الرخاء والتقدم والاستقرار على نطاق عالمي يجمع كافة الشعوب على هذا الكوكب. أصحاب الفخامة والمعالي والسعادة، إن مجموعة البريكس والتي تمثل ربع الاقتصاد العالمي وموطنا لنحو نصف سكان العالم تستعد للقيام بدور محوري وأكبر في تشكيل الأجندة الدولية وتحديد الأولويات العالمية في السنوات المقبلة. وفي هذا الصدد أرى أنه من المهم التأكيد على أن الإمارات العربية المتحدة تعد من أهم الشركاء التجاريين والاستثماريين للدول الأعضاء في مجموعة البريكس، حيث بلغ حجم التجارة غير النفطية 677 مليار دولار، وبلغت تدفقات الاستثمار 38 مليار دولار بين عام 2018 و2022. من الجدير بالذكر أن الإمارات العربية المتحدة هي أيضاً ثاني دولة غير مؤسس وأول اقتصاد في الشرق الأوسط ينضم إلى بنك التنمية الجديد في عام 2021، مما يؤكد إدراكنا المبكر للدور المحوري الذي يمكن أن تلعبه منصة بريكس في تعزيز التنمية العالمية والنمو الاقتصادي للجميع. ومن جهة أخرى أظهرت دولة الإمارات التزاماً راسخاً بالمشاركة السياسية والدبلوماسية الوثيقة مع الدول الأعضاء في مجموعة بريكس، وعلى نطاق أوسع من خلال اتباع نهج متوازن ومنفتح في التعامل مع الشؤون الدولية، سواء في سياق مؤتمر الأطراف في اتفاقية الأمم المتحدة الإطارية بشأن تغيير المناخ COP28 المقبل المقرر عقده في دبي في نوفمبر، أو في غيره من المنتديات المتعددة الأطراف البارزة. أصحاب الفخامة والمعالي والسعادة، إن عقد اجتماع اليوم في أفريقيا يرمز إلى هدفنا المشترك المتمثل في بناء قدر أكبر من الشمولية الدولية والاحترام المتبادل. تحرص دولة الإمارات على الاستفادة من المنصات الدولية المحورية بما في ذلك البريكس لإقامة شراكات جديدة ودعم أجندة التنمية في أفريقيا والجنوب العالمي باعتبارها شريكاً تجارياً ومستثمراً رئيسياً في القارة الأفريقية. السيدات والسادة، اسمحوا لي أن أجدد التأكيد بأن دولة الإمارات باعتبارها دولة تقع على مفترق طرق التجارة العالمية على تعزيز السلام والاستقرار والازدهار في الشرق الأوسط، وتتطلع إلى تطوير شراكة أوثق مع مجموعة البريكس الآن وفي المستقبل. لقد سعدت بمناقشاتنا اليوم، وأود مرة أخرى أن أجدد تقديري لدعوتي للمشاركة في هذا الحدث الفاعل الذي يأتي في الوقت المناسب والحاسم، وشكرا لكم جميعا.
Thank you very much, Your Royal Highness. And now invite His Excellency Slamba Tsohwane, Vice President of the Republic of Botswana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, allow me to recognize His Excellency Mr. Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa and Chair of BRICS, and his deputy. Allow me, equally important, to observe that the BRICS leaders have already been recognized. Allow me to deem protocol as observed. Mr. Chairman, I would like to thank the BRICS Summit host, President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa of the Republic of South Africa, to have invited His Excellency Dr. Mokgweetsi Eric Masisi, the President of the Republic of Botswana, to participate in BRICS Africa Outreach and BRICS Plus Dialogues under the theme BRICS and Africa, Partnership for Mutually Accelerated Growth, Sustainable Development and Inclusive Multilateralism. Unfortunately, due to other pressing commitments, His Excellency the President of the Republic of Botswana, who would have loved to be here, is unable to be here today. His Excellency has delegated me to represent him. Today's theme is apt because it acknowledges and recognizes the important role the BRICS plays in promoting strategic partnerships that spur accelerated growth and sustainable development and inclusive multilateralism, particularly for developing regions such as Africa. Excellencies, it is worrisome that economic growth on the African continent remains sluggish, dragged down by a series of severe and mutually reinforcing shocks, including COVID-19 pandemic, climate change, surging inflation, and low investment growth, food and energy crisis, to mention but a few. Excellencies, despite being hit by a confluence of shocks, African economies remain resilient. However, there is need to accelerate growth by, among others, scaling up energy investments. 2, increasing the employability of workers as well as the productivity of enterprises through skills development. 3, enhancing digital cooperation and developing dynamic innovation ecosystems. 4, partnering with countries of Global South in creating mechanisms for intellectual property protection and commercialization. 5, strengthening participation in manufacturing global value chains through increasing value-added exports and promoting innovation. And 6, lastly, broadening and diversifying financial products. Mr. Chairman, recognizing that BRICS economies represent a significant share of both global trade and world GDP, there is an opportunity to enhance economic cooperation and open new opportunities, boost economic exports and attract foreign investment to the African continent. Excellencies, the Sustainable Development Goals report of 2023 illustrates that halfway to the deadline of 2030 agenda, we are leaving more than half of the world behind, casting doubt of the likelihood of realizing sustainable development goals. On that note, Mr. Chairman, I must recognize milestones by different countries. They demonstrate pockets of successes. In that note, Mr. Speaker, in the context of the health target of the Global Sustainable Development Goal, Botswana has achieved a milestone under what is regarded as 95-95-95. We are able, or we have been able to achieve 95-98-98. This is what raises hope, Mr. Chairman. Within the African Union, we are gearing up into second 10-year implementation plan of Agenda 2063, whose goals and targets have a 70% inherent interconnections with those of Agenda 2030. Excellencies, about half of the Agenda 2030 targets are off track, then inevitably Africa's Agenda 2063 is also in peril. Like Agenda 2063, Mr. Chairman, there exists an SDG financing gap that is exacerbated by climate change and conflict on the African continent. Clearly, reforms of the global finance system and more targeted financing solutions are needed to get back on track to meet the global goals. The BRICS New Development Bank stands to make a meaningful impact in providing valuable resources to help fill the massive gap in investment and infrastructure and sustainable development in developing countries. Excellencies, Botswana remains committed to a more equitable, inclusive, and effective international order. We are of the conviction that Africa ought to have an enhanced presence and voice at the table of global diplomacy. For us, this is a legitimate demand as Africa is increasingly being recognized as a new center of power, as others already stated today. Today's dialogues are a perfect platform to continue efforts towards a more representative, fairer, and balanced international order. Excellencies, we note with keen interest the BRICS leaders' ongoing discussions on BRICS expansion, underscoring the growing significance of this bloc. We view the BRICS family as an important trade and development partners, sources of foreign direct investment, and champions of the interests of the global South. On trade, we are also following the BRICS leaders' discussions on the possibility to use local currencies in trading. Under the African Continental Free Trade Area, a Pan-African payment and settlement system has been launched in 2022 that enables the efficient flow of money across African borders, bringing about financial integration. We believe that this payment system will shape the ebb and flow of not only intra-Africa trade, but also trade with countries of the global South and the rest of the world. As previous speakers have clearly stated, partnerships in a bedrock of the BRICS since its founding. In this respect, I commend the BRICS country to promoting inclusivity and engagement with our beloved continent of Africa through the BRICS Africa Outreach and BRICS Plus dialogue. Before I conclude, Mr. Chairman, I would like, Mr. Chairman, because of other pressing commitments, to seek leave immediately as I have concluded. I thank you very much for your attention and your endurance for a long day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I now invite His Excellency General Nyikadzino Chiwenga, Vice President of Zimbabwe.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency, President Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa and Chair of the BRICS, Heads of States and Governments, Honorable Ministers, Your Excellencies, Shareholders of the New Development Bank, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am representing His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Dr. Emmerson Dambudzo Mnangagwa, who could not be here because of we are running currently, we have got an election currently going on in our country. And I quote his message. On behalf of the government and people of the Republic of Zimbabwe, and on my own behalf, I wish to express profound appreciation to you, President Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa, and the people of the Republic of South Africa for your warm welcome and the hospitality extended to my delegation since their arrival in this beautiful city of Johannesburg. Let me commend you, Mr. Chairman, for inviting me and other leaders of the African countries to attend this auspicious summit and to engage in the dialogue with the BRICS leaders. Your efforts to ensure that the African continent is placed on the agenda of BRICS are highly commendable. Mr. President, your lobbying for concrete support from the BRICS nations towards Africa's development is indeed an attestation of South Africa's commitment to the ethos of the Pan-Africanism and South-South cooperation. Excellencies, this summit comes at a time when some countries from the global north are politicizing and weaponizing the global economy at the detriment of small and developing nations. The world is under pressure from multiple complex and interconnected crises, which the strong take advantage of the most vulnerable among the community of nations. Actions that incite conflicts, distort international norms, are now sacrosancted, whilst the Cold War mentality broke confrontation, protectionism, unilateralism, and the imposition of illegal, unilateral, politically motivated coercive measures ensue, encouraged by the powerful countries in the global north. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, although global development has suffered major setbacks due to the evolving security challenges, this group of emerging economies has upheld the spirit of peace than of war, the spirit of progress than regression, the spirit of openness than isolation, the spirit of cooperation than confrontation, inclusiveness and win-win cooperation. This group has practiced true multilateralism and achieved solid results in pragmatic and mutual coexistence. To us, BRICS is family, and it is our hope that with the joining of more developing countries, BRICS will represent the global south with a louder voice on the world stage. Developing countries should stand together and refuse to be intimidated by imperialist behavior. We should reject zero-sum games, power politics, and unite towards the main goal of building a community with a shared future for mankind. Excellencies, Zimbabwe, like many other countries in Africa, is committed to pursuing a path of sustained economic growth and transformation through continental integration. We are pleased to be working with the BRICS partners to successfully implement our market integration objectives. All African countries and BRICS nations share similar views and interest in improving and reforming the current international order and global governance system. The world needs a just global order which provides the future we want, which leaves no one and no place behind. Excellencies, let me take this opportunity to express the strong and unwavering intent of Zimbabwe to join the BRICS alliance. Zimbabwe as a nation recognizes the immense value and potential that BRICS holds for the economic and political development of our country and the African continent as a whole. As a country, Zimbabwe perceives how BRICS represents a formidable alliance that fosters a multipolar and inclusive world order. Joining this alliance would provide Zimbabwe with a unique opportunity to collaborate with like-minded nations and harness the benefits for collective strength. Excellencies, as a country, Zimbabwe applauds the establishment of the new development bank and the proposal to use local currencies between member states in the BRICS and other countries of the South. Like other countries of the South, Zimbabwe hopes to benefit from the new development bank as an alternative source of funding for developmental projects. I am pleased to inform you that despite our detractors to undermine our democracy, which we fought for through the armed struggle, Zimbabwe successfully held the much anticipated 2023 harmonized general elections in accordance with our laws. We are also guided and informed by the SADC principles and guidelines governing elections, as well as the AU Declaration on Principles Governing Democratic Elections in Africa. These were elections in which all parties were free to campaign in all areas of the country. Elections which competing ideas were discussed and debated freely and openly. I took it upon myself and other opposition leaders to preach the message of peace, non-violence, harmony, love, and unity before, during, and after the elections. Zimbabweans went out in their millions to define their destiny and shape their future, calmly and peacefully, in full glare of a broad spectrum of international observers and global media. The electorate exercised its democratic right to elect leaders of its choice. Let me assure you that Zimbabwe will continue to be peaceful as we wait for the announcement of the harmonized general election results by the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission in line with our laws. In conclusion, let me assure you that as a country, we are fully behind BRICS in its role on Africa's development, in line with the theme of this summit, BRICS and Africa, Partnership for Mutually Accelerated Growth, Sustainable Development, and Inclusive Multilateralism, cross-court, and I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I now invite His Excellency Don Pramudwinai, Deputy Prime Minister and also Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Thailand.
Thank you. Your Excellency, Mr. Paul Mashatile, Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa, Secretary General of the United Nations, Honorable President and Prime Minister, distinguished delegates. I wish to thank the government of South Africa for hosting this BRICS Plus meeting at a time and juncture where vision, courage, and leadership are so needed to meet the increasingly complex challenges of our world. BRICS provides a foreground for the growing clout and role of emerging economies that could rise above the political and ideological divide. It represents a novel type of cooperation that not only recognizes but respects each nation's sovereign rights. It seeks to find a common ground for advancing tangible and intangible developments that are inclusive and sustainable, and based on the shared interest and common benefits of our peoples. After all, rising tide should raise all boats. Thailand welcomes the decision of BRICS leaders to expand the grouping's membership so it truly represents the world's diversity and inclusive development. On our part, Thailand has partaken in all 3 BRICS Plus meetings since it was launched in 2017. Our participation is not just to show up, but to demonstrate our shared vision with that of BRICS and our commitment to quality development as a unifying and enabling factor of world peace and common prosperity. On the matter of African outreach, our engagement with Africa dates back over a few decades. We have projects in more than 50 African nations, providing scholarships, sharing our development models of sufficiency economy philosophy that focuses on sustainability and grassroots participation to foster that sense of ownership. We share our experience in the new bio-circular green economic model that highlights the complementarity between development and environmental equilibrium. 2 facts evident in BRICS and BRICS Plus efforts is the importance of multilateralism and cooperative competition, or co-opetition, that leads to the constructive outcomes for all involved, because its primary motivation is not to win at the expense of others, but rather to gain and optimize knowledge of relative competence for development and cooperation. Your Excellencies, Mr. Deputy President or President at this juncture, distinguished delegates, Thailand shares the same fundamental policy direction with BRICS and BRICS Plus of enhancing the role of emerging economies and South-South collaboration in addressing the global governance, as well as the multifaceted human security, being it in the realm of economy, finance, infrastructure, food, energy, or climate change, etc., etc. We seek to further engage with BRICS and all partners in furtherance of the fulcrum for peace, growth, and sustainable development and inclusive multilateralism. Our parting plea to this congregation now here today and the world at large is that we all should strive for peace and unity and turn our differences into our strength for development, not the justification for war and conflicts. I trust that the goal and objective of every government is the betterment of the livelihood of our peoples, not the infliction of sufferings and deprivation. Such is not an unattainable lofty ideal, but our guiding realism as envisioned by the Secretary General of the United Nations in his new agenda for peace. Thank you, BRICS, and thank you, Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I now invite His Excellency Dr. Ziad Abu Amin, Deputy Prime Minister of the State of Palestine.
His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, the President of the Republic of South Africa. Your Excellency, the Chair, Paul Mashatile, the Vice President of the Republic of South Africa. On behalf of President Mahmoud Abbas, the President of the State of Palestine, I convey the warmest regards and deep gratitude to Your Excellencies for inviting Palestine to this summit. And I also convey the greetings of our President to the leaders of the BRICS group, as well as to all the leaders and participants in this important gathering. Excellencies, as we gather here today at this momentous summit, we are reminded of the remarkable resilience demonstrated by South Africa in its long journey towards freedom and justice. Just as South Africa's unwavering spirit inspired the whole world, we, the people of Palestine, draw strength from that narrative of a triumph over apartheid, oppression, and injustice. I stand before you as a representative of a nation that has time and again demonstrated its unyielding commitment to peace, justice, and human dignity. We are honored to be here among the distinguished leaders of BRICS, nations that collectively hold the potential to shape the path of a global progress. Our presence in this summit as one of the friends of BRICS, a coalition of nations eager to join this dynamic alliance, bears testimony to our shared aspirations for progress and prosperity. We recognize the significance of BRICS as a beacon of cooperation, paving the way for a new era of global economic development and equitable growth. We in Palestine fully embrace the goals of the BRICS countries and the summit are trying to achieve, be it managing the dangers of climate change, enhancing sustainable social and economic development, fighting poverty, and ensuring equality and justice in this world of ours. While respecting the BRICS' unique conditions for entry, Palestine hopes that the BRICS nation would consider at some point our request to become an observant or an associate member in this strategic dialogue. We wish to stand shoulder to shoulder with you, so please keep the door open for us to become a part of this vital alliance. We are firm believers in justice, mutual respect, and shared prosperity with the BRICS leaders and countries which the BRICS leaders and countries are promoting. And now, as we set our sights on the future, we call on each of our friends to support us to end the Israeli occupation of our country, to extend international protection to the people of Palestine. It's crucial to support our bid to become a full member of the United Nations. This endeavor represents a tangible step towards ensuring a just and lasting peace in our region. Thank you all for your support for the just cause of Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And now we invite Dr. Abdul Latif bin Rashid Al Zayani, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Bahrain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. فخامة الرئيس رامافوسا رئيس جمهورية جنوب أفريقيا، أصحاب الفخامة والمعالي والسعادة، الحضور الكرام، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يسرني أن أشارك في هذا الحوار باسم مملكة البحرين، وأن أنقل تحيات جلالة الملك حمد بن عيسى آل خليفة المعظم، وصاحب السمو الملكي الأمير سلمان بن حمد آل خليفة، ولي العهد ورئيس مجلس الوزراء وأطيب تمنياتهم لهذه القمة بالتوفيق والنجاح. إن البحرين تقدر مجموعة البريكس باعتبارها شريكاً رئيسياً للعديد من الدول في تعزيز الأمن والاستقرار والتنمية المستدامة في العالم، وترحب بالرؤية التي تعكس عالماً أكثر عدلاً وإنصافاً وازدهاراً للجميع. وقد سرتنا إنجازات مجموعة البريكس في مختلف المجالات، بما في ذلك بنك التنمية الجديد وشراكة مجموعة البريكس في شأن الثورة الصناعية الجديدة، والتي تعزز التعاون في مجال التحول الرقمي والتصنيع والإبداع. إن التحديات التي تواجهها اليوم ونواجهها جميعاً تتطلب شبكات ثقة وتعاون أقوى وأوسع نطاقاً بين أكبر عدد ممكن من الدول، كما تمثل في مواجهة جائحة كوفيد-19 وعواقبها التي أثرت على الانتعاش الاقتصادي للبلدان في جميع أنحاء العالم. ولا بد أن نشيد هنا بالمجموعة لتضامنها والدعم الذي قدمته لمكافحة الجائحة وآثارها في العديد من دول العالم. إن تنمية مثل هذه الشراكات التعاونية هو مبدأ أساسي في نهج سياستنا الخارجية في مملكة البحرين، وامتدادا طبيعيا لقيم التسامح والحوار والتعايش القديمة في البحرين. ولهذا السبب تقدمت البحرين مؤخرا بطلب للانضمام إلى مجموعة البريكس، ونرحب بقرار توسيع عضوية البريكس خلال هذه القمة، ونبارك للدول التي تم قبول انضمامها للمجموعة. ومن خلال تعميق التعاون بين الدول المتشابهة الفكر على أساس القانون الدولي والاحترام المتبادل والتعددية الأكثر شمولاً وفعالية، يصبح بوسعنا تعزيز مصالحنا وتطلعاتنا المشتركة في مختلف المجالات، وأننا نرى منافع محتملة هائلة للعمل معاً وتبادل الخبرات وبناء قدراتنا الفردية والجماعية في مجالات مثل التجارة وتقاسم التكنولوجيا والرعاية الصحية والسياحة. وسيمكننا القيام بذلك من تحقيق فوائد ملموسة لجميع بلداننا وشعوبنا، ودفع عجلة الازدهار الاقتصادي وتنمية التعاون الاستراتيجي الذي يتجاوز الحدود الجغرافية. أصحاب الفخامة والمعالي والسعادة، أود التأكيد مجدداً على التزام مملكة البحرين الراسخ بتعزيز علاقاتنا مع دول مجموعة البريكس والدول المشاركة في حوار مجموعة البريكس بلس اليوم، كما أؤكد على أننا لا نزال حريصين على المشاركة الفعالة والبناءة في الاجتماعات المقبلة، وأعرب عن ثقتنا بأن هذه القمة ستكون معلماً بارزاً في تعزيز التعاون الدائم والعملي لصالح العالم أوسع. وفي الختام نتمنى لشعوب الدول المشاركة في هذه القمة ولشعوب العالم أجمع السلام والأمن والنماء والازدهار. شكراً لكم السيد الرئيس.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I now invite His Excellency, Mr. Sergei Alenik of the Republic of Belarus, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. President Ramaphosa, distinguished heads of state and governments, dear colleagues and friends, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the President of the Republic of Belarus, His Excellency Alexander Lukashenko, we congratulate the Republic of South Africa on its successful BRICS chairmanship and warm hospitality provided to all of us. Belarus highly appreciates the first-time opportunity to be a part of the BRICS Plus and BRICS Outreach dialogues. The historic significance of the 15th BRICS Summit and these dialogues is obvious not only for all those present here, but also for the majority of the countries in the world. At the times of global transformation, a key role should be played by the structures that do not multiply the dividing lines, but recognize the shared responsibility for the present and common future of the humanity. It is now more than ever the world needs organizations and platforms which seek ways to improve cooperation, to ensure development, and move forward rather than oppose each other. This is how Belarus sees BRICS. We are impressed by its inclusiveness and focus on common interests, equality and solidarity of all its members. This is the future we are seeking, whilst the discrimination and neo-colonial approaches should be left in the past. A growing number of countries wishing to join the association is a vivid proof of BRICS' appeal in the region and the world. Belarus is not beyond the pale of this process. Moreover, we maintain a high level of bilateral relations with all the member countries of BRICS. In May this year, President of Belarus officially expressed the intention of our country to join BRICS group. We hope that our application will be favorably considered and accepted. Of course, I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate all the countries which have been approved by BRICS members for the full-fledged membership. We have something to offer, and we are ready to work actively on all issues of its agenda. Belarus supports and generates initiatives aimed at building a more fair and safer world in the global and regional dimensions, and consistently advocates a diversity of ways for countries and people to progress. We are ready to consolidate the efforts and work closely together with the BRICS member countries in these most important areas. We do not pose a threat to anyone and do not generate tension. We advocate peace, creation and sustainable development. As many of you know, Belarus has been actively involved in peacekeeping efforts in our region for nearly a decade now. Despite an unprecedented illegal pressure my country is facing nowadays, Belarus is strongly committed to the principles of just world order, peaceful coexistence, indivisible security, and mutual respect among all state actors. Belarus is one of the world leaders in exports of IT services per capita. It's a significant producer of engineering, mining, agricultural machinery, chemical and petrochemical products, as well as food. We are a reliable partner for mutual trade and investment for the implementation of joint projects with BRICS members and with all the countries in Africa. We are ready to share our knowledge, and we are rely on joint mutually beneficial work and cooperation. We are ready to make a significant contribution to maintaining international food security, including in the countries participating in today's dialogues. Belarus is one of the world leaders in production of potash fertilizers. Until 2022, our country's share in global potash trade was 20%. Last year, it dropped to 9%. This happened due to illegal restrictions on its transportation imposed by a number of Western countries. As a result, there was a shortage of fertilizers in the world, and their prices went up. In 2022, Belarus' share in the African potash fertilizer market fell from 42% to 3%. As a result, 16% drop in the African grain harvest. In an effort to safeguard our joint interests and to prevent other countries from suffering for the benefit of Western ambitions, we are looking for the new logistics chains to restore fertilizer supplies. However, this requires non-standard solution and new tools. We are ready to look for them together with you, our esteemed partners. We support the aspiration of the BRICS countries to expand cooperation in logistics and cross-border e-commerce. Belarus is ready to join the BRICS effort to increase mutual payments in national currencies and create common payment instruments. The dominance of the dollar and the euro in international trade is a source of increasing global risk, as the financial policies of their issuers are not credible. Developing countries must be protected against arbitrary action and be able to trade freely. The new BRICS Development Bank and its initiative to finance more projects in local currencies could play a key role in this process. We are interested to kick off the process of joining this young but very promising international financial structure. We are convinced that the solution to the challenges our countries facing nowadays would be facilitated by the combined efforts of various regional formats that have similar goals and approaches. We see such potential for cooperation in the synergy between BRICS, Eurasian Economic Union, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, perhaps other regional formats. We propose to think about the practical implementation of the initiative of the President of the Republic of Belarus to hold a joint summit of these organizations. We also support the initiative to hold the BRICS Sports Games in 2024. If invited, our team will be ready to take part in this significant sports event. Considering current discrimination within the international Olympic movement, we believe that all athletes should have the right to show their skills in a fair competition without political speculation. Excellencies, Belarus is confident in the future of BRICS and is ready to work for our common goals and for our common good. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I now invite His Excellency Carlos Pinto Pereira, Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Cooperation and Communities of the Republic of Guinea-Bissau. You have the floor. Our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Guinea-Bissau. Okay, is the minister not here? Okay, we'll come back if the minister is back in the room. Let me then invite His Excellency Dr. Alfred N. Mutua, Cabinet Secretary for Foreign and Diaspora Affairs of the Republic of Kenya.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa and Chair of BRICS, Heads of State and Government from Africa and the Global South, Excellency Ministers, all protocols observed, ladies and gentlemen. From the outset, allow me to express my utmost appreciation to you, Mr. Chairman, and the BRICS leaders for extending an invitation to His Excellency Honorable William Ruto of the Republic of Kenya, who could not be here today, but conveys his best wishes for a successful summit. When the great King Shaka Zulu was expanding his empire from Natal to Bulawayo here in southern Africa, my ancestors in Kenya were walking long distances to the Indian Ocean coast to bring goods to other traders from the Middle East, Asia, and beyond. The currency of choice then, whether here or the East African coast, was based on what one needed. You exchanged animal hides and got salt, gold, and received silk, ivory in return for spices, among other goods. Today, listening to the discussions here at the BRICS Summit and remembering the way we traded in the current system, which is pegged against most of us, I tell myself that the issues are no longer about if, but when we will adopt a fairer, predictable, and reasonable way of transacting with each other. My ancestors would be shocked, for example, if they woke up today and found that Kenyans cannot use the Kenya shilling to buy goods in the neighboring beautiful country of Her Excellency Samia Suluhu of the United Republic of Tanzania without using an external currency, resulting in high foreign exchange interest and monies lost. Quite ridiculous, to say the least. Last night, during the colorful cultural performances and dinner hosted by Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, the President of South Africa, he said that our diversity is our greatest strength. This meeting is showing us that our unity, especially the unity of purpose, is the only way forward if we are going to have to change that and be able to benefit from it all. President Lula da Silva, with a Pan-African tone this morning, enumerated the challenges we face in this African continent despite the available opportunities. This has also been echoed very well by the African Union Chair, President Azali Ousmani of the Union of Comoros. They have also stated very well, and many have repeated the same, that what we need is action. Truth be told, for example, many African nations are suffocating in debt that is becoming more difficult to repay. This modern-day slavery of our livelihoods cannot be solved with nice words, but concrete implementation of ideas. The global economy continues to feel the heat from soaring inflation, high cost of debt, and the rising risk of debt distress, slow growth of credit, persistent, disproportionate, and multidimensional impacts of COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the disruptions in the supply chain and the effects of climate change. We propose a systematic resolution of the developing country debt overhang rather than case-by-case debt defaults workouts under the G20 common framework. This debt overhang is a big threat to developing countries' ability to finance development. Now, for avoidance of doubt, we are not saying that we want our debts to be forgiven and forgotten or that we do not wish to meet our obligations. What we are saying is that with the effects of COVID, climate change, international geopolitics, it is impossible for many nations to pay their debts and have anything left for development. That is just the truth. Our proposal is for the debt repayments to be renegotiated and suspended for a period of time, say 10, 15, or 20 years, so that the monies that are available are used for development. We do not want to keep on borrowing because all the monies we have are tied to debt repayments. We have to break the cycle. After the deferred payment period, nations will have developed their economies to such an extent that paying the debts will be easy. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we deeply regret that increased financing gap in developing countries is as a result of an unstable international financial system. Indeed, the unpredictable and insufficient development financing continues to push its economies to the brink. As President Hakainde Hichilema of Zambia put it this morning, the cost of capital has to be addressed. Kenya, like many other developing countries, has consistently expressed concern with the existing world development order, characterized by an asymmetrical international financial system that is discriminative to the developing world. There is no vivid example of inequality and discrimination in the world order as an exclusion in the permanent seat of the UN Security Council. Kenya stands with the sentiment expressed by many, including His Excellency the President of Eritrea, Lesotho, Ghana, Malawi, Namibia, Senegal, and others. At the very least, this situation, this status in the UN has to change. There is an urgent need to broaden as well as strengthen the voice and participation of developing countries in the decision-making and global economic governance as well. We do not want to be participants, but also want to be shareholders. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, economic development cannot occur without a stable government. We must all stand together in condemning undemocratic regimes which usurp the will of the people by overthrowing democratically elected governments, as happened in Niger. we cannot go to an era of coups. Peace, security, and the resultant stability are critical for desired development. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, allow me to inform you that His Excellency President William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, in his capacity as the chairperson of the Committee of African Heads of State and Government, extends a warm invitation to the African Climate Summit, which is scheduled to take place from 4th-6th September 2023 in Nairobi, and collectively champion and chart a sustainable path in the fight against climate change. The Nairobi Summit will not be business as usual, but will be the beginning of a revolution that will change with climate change is managed and funded. We welcome you all. See you in Nairobi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I now invite Her Excellency Ms. Yvette Giuliani Sila, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Madagascar.
Excellences, Monsieur Cyril Ramaphosa, Président de la République d'Afrique du Sud et Président en exercice des BRICS. Excellences, Messieurs les chefs d'État des pays du BRICS, Excellences, Messieurs les chefs d'État et de gouvernement, Monsieur le Secrétaire général des Nations Unies, honorables délégués, Mesdames et Messieurs. Mes premiers mots s'adressent à Monsieur le Président, car je voudrais exprimer les profonds regrets de son Excellence Monsieur Ange Rajoelina, Président de la République de Madagascar, qui aurait voulu honorer personnellement cet important rendez-vous avec les leaders des BRICS, du BRICS+, et des chefs d'État de l'Afrique. Permettez-moi ainsi de transmettre ses vœux de plein succès pour les dialogues BRICS-Africa Outreach qu'il considère comme une grande opportunité pour manifester notre volonté commune de solidarité, de respect mutuel, de coopération fructueuse. Je voudrais ensuite remercier le gouvernement et le peuple sud-africain pour l'accueil chaleureux ainsi que l'hospitalité réservée à la délégation malgache et à moi-même depuis notre arrivée à Johannesburg. J'aimerais également saluer le leadership de la République d'Afrique du Sud pour l'organisation réussie de cette rencontre internationale d'envergure à laquelle nous avons le plaisir de prendre part. Ces pays jettent une lumière particulière sur le continent africain et les pays du Sud. À un moment où le monde a besoin de solidarité, d'action collective et de réponses communes face aux défis émergents et partagés. Le thème choisi, tout d'abord, est un thème pertinent qui répond aux préoccupations du temps présent. Le thème est un thème opportun et porteur puisqu'il reflète nos aspirations ainsi que les résultats voulus et attendus pour une croissance et un développement durable pour tous. Ce thème reflète un souci d'équité face aux inégalités. Ainsi, une croissance accélérée doit être équitablement partagée. Un des défis centraux de l'Afrique est en effet de réduire la pauvreté à grande échelle, transformer les économies du continent en vue de créer plus de richesses. À ce titre, nous, pays africains, nous nous attelons au développement et à la diversification de notre marché pour accroître notre part au commerce international ainsi qu'aux chaînes de valeur mondiales. Et tout cela à travers notamment le projet phare de l'Union africaine, la ZLECAf. Aujourd'hui, nous célébrons la coopération avec les BRICS. Que nous apporte donc cette coopération? La coopération entre l'Afrique et les BRICS nous permettent de bénéficier d'un soutien technique et financier. Par ailleurs, l'Afrique compte sur l'augmentation de ses échanges commerciaux, des investissements étrangers directs, ainsi que de l'aide publique au développement en provenance de nos partenaires émergents. Pour Madagascar, nous nous réjouissons particulièrement de la coopération entre Madagascar et les pays membres du BRICS dans des domaines clés du développement tels que, entre autres, les infrastructures, l'agriculture, le renforcement de capacités et encore le commerce. L'objectif de Madagascar, de l'État malgache, est de réaliser les ambitions et les aspirations du peuple, celle de voir Madagascar sur le chemin de l'industrialisation, d'être un pays compétitif et attractif. Dans cette optique, nous avons opéré des réformes porteurs de changement en faveur de mesures incitatives qui ont été initiées en vue d'attirer les investissements massifs sur Madagascar dans tous les domaines du développement, l'agriculture, l'industrie minière, ainsi que la promotion de l'industrialisation, tout cela pour soutenir la création d'emplois et pour apporter de la valeur ajoutée à nos produits. L'Afrique regorge de richesses. L'Afrique possède des ressources inimaginables et inestimables. Les pays du BRICS et les pays du Sud gagneraient donc à travailler étroitement de concert dans une confiance mutuelle. Dans l'industrie minière, par exemple, Madagascar projette de travailler avec les pays de l'Afrique. Tout à l'heure a été évoquée la nécessité de changer de paradigme. Mais changer de paradigme, c'est oser le changement avec audace. Osons également penser avec audace. En effet, la financiarisation à outrance de l'économie exclut nos sociétés et nos économies de l'économie mondiale. Heureusement que l'Afrique se cherche de nouveaux partenaires pour satisfaire les facteurs clés de réussite dans sa trajectoire dynamique. Ce facteur de réussite, c'est l'accès au financement. L'Afrique gagne en effet à étendre son partenariat avec la nouvelle banque de développement des BRICS pour soutenir nos gouvernements dans la mise en œuvre de projets de développement durable, à l'instar des énergies renouvelables, qui représentent pour nous une priorité afin de pallier au faible taux d'accès à l'énergie. Mais nous avons un autre facteur extrêmement important, celui-là. L'Afrique, c'est le continent de la jeunesse. La jeunesse, la plus jeune au monde, se trouve en Afrique. Nos jeunes représentent un bassin de potentiel énorme. Mais elle nous questionne et nous lui devons des réponses. Je voudrais terminer en soulignant que croissance et développement nécessitent paix et sécurité. Je ne reviendrai pas sur ce qui a été dit auparavant. Le multilatéralisme inclusif est un moyen efficace pour parvenir à une paix durable, mais il nous faut aussi unir nos voix pour faire primer le droit international. Nous sommes en train d'écrire une autre page de l'histoire, notamment de l'histoire de l'Afrique. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Minister. I now invite His Excellency Mr. Alan Ganu, Minister of Land Transport and Land Rail, Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and Trade of the Republic of Mauritius.
Thank you, Chair. Your Excellency, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa and Chair of BRICS, Your Excellencies, respected leaders of the BRICS, distinguished heads of state and government, ladies and gentlemen, and dear friends. It is a great pleasure and an honor for me to be here today with leaders from BRICS and the Global South. I wish at the very outset to convey the warm greetings of Honorable Pravin Kumar Jagannath, the Prime Minister of the Republic of Mauritius, who unfortunately could not be present. Let me express also my gratitude to our brother President Ramaphosa for having invited the leaders of our continent to today's dialogues to engage in building mutually beneficial partnerships for a multipolar world. The BRICS outreach to Africa is a significant and milestone initiative because I am sure you will all agree with me that the current global environment often leaves the impression that Africa's realities and issues are not sufficiently being given due attention. We are indeed glad that BRICS have chosen to partner with our countries and have elevated Africa at the very core of their summit. At this juncture, Chair, let me congratulate India for its technological and scientific prowess demonstrated by the successful Chandrayaan mission landing on the moon. I do so, Chair, because it is heartwarming to see that these vibrant economies, which are now driving the world into the future, have faith in partnering with Africa and Africans. Chair, for having established that nationally driven development processes are possible, BRICS provides an inspiration to Africa. It has created a real impact through its commitment for an equitable international order enabling the emergence of Global South. In this regard, the Republic of Mauritius looks forward to the complete decolonization of Africa and the eradication of the last vestiges of colonialism. Chair, the wide interest to join BRICS, as expressed during our debates since this morning, shows its growing economic and political relevance. And its decision toward expansion, as was announced this morning by the President of South Africa, will instill the organization with more clout. Mr. Chairperson, Excellencies, the presence of BRICS alongside Africa is a game changer It will establish a political and economic architecture conducive to the development of our continent based on a just and an equitable governance system. Developing countries and BRICS will focus on issues such as sustainable development, innovation and digital technology, development finance, climate change, peace and security, and the imperative of a multilateral, rules-based world order. This collaboration, Chair, will not only address the complex realities of our continent.
We recall the Bandung Conference of 1955, when Asian and African nations demanded a greater voice for the developing countries in world affairs. The conference called for the recognition of the equality of all nations, both large and small. We still share that common vision of a fair and a just world. We still seek to overcome polarity and division. We want a world without barriers between North, South, East, and West. We still seek a world in which we work together, underpinned by mutual respect. Through the 15th BRICS Summit and this dialogue, we should strive to advance the Bandung spirit of unity, friendship, and cooperation. In South Africa, we have a word that we use to describe friendship, cooperation, and we call that Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a practice based on the understanding that our success, our prosperity, and well-being depends on the success, prosperity, and well-being of others. That is why we also use another South African term about our identities, whilst respecting the identities of others. We often say, I am because you are. And that is a recognition, and that is the respect that we want to accord to one another. We see the BRICS partnership as a catalyst for global growth and development and response to the needs of all nations. It is the right of Africa and the entire global South to fully reap the benefits of global trade and investment. Without trade and investment, our economies cannot thrive and our people's material conditions cannot improve. As the African continent, we are determined that the continent's substantial resources are harnessed for the benefit as well as for the development of the people of Africa. The African Continental Free Trade Area, once fully operational, will unlock the benefits of the continental market and generate substantial opportunities for African countries, but also for other countries. To make use of these opportunities, Africa is looking to BRICS partnership to unlock infrastructure and development financing. This was part of the founding vision of the new development bank. This bank is playing a leading role in efforts to increase the resilience of the global South and to bring fairness to the global trading system, the financial system, and to strengthen BRICS currencies. We have to reform global economic, financial, and political, as well as the multilateral trading system, so that we can create a conducive environment for fair trade. While many countries of the Global South are seeking significant progress in industrialization, in technological development, in innovation, and the digital economy, they are not fully reaping the economic benefits of their efforts. By working together, by sharing skills and capabilities, by mobilizing resources, we will be able to give renewed impetus to the global growth and sustainable development. We need to move beyond expressions of solidarity towards inclusion, mutually beneficial economic cooperation as well. We trust that this dialogue that is being attended by some 65 countries will provide leadership, vision, and hope as we strive together for a better Africa and for a better world. It is for this reason that I welcome you all warmly, and I welcome you all on behalf of the BRICS leaders who have just issued their declaration, which outlines a number of important aspects. The BRICS leaders have also taken a decision to expand the BRICS membership, and that announcement having been made, we welcome those new members, but at the same time, that is the first phase, and other phases will follow, and we welcome various other countries in the partnership of the BRICS countries. So thank you very much, and thank you for being here. I thank you. Having done that, I now would like to invite President Lula da Silva, the President of the Republic of Brazil, to take the floor.
Obrigado, Presidente Ramaphosa. Obrigado, companheiros presidentes dos países que compõem os BRICS. Eu gostaria de cumprimentar o presidente Ramaphosa por dedicar este debate à parceria dos BRICS com o Sul Global, em especial com a África. É hora de revitalizar a cooperação entre os países em desenvolvimento. Vemos hoje o surgimento de novos desafios que se somam aos problemas de longa data. Fomos atingidos por uma pandemia, por novos conflitos e por uma grave emergência climática, no momento em que trabalhávamos pela implementação dos Objetivos de Desenvolvimento Sustentável. Quando adotada a Agenda 2030, traçava rota para um futuro melhor. Hoje, metade das metas está atrasada e houve estagnação ou retrocesso em quase um terço das metas. A insegurança alimentar regrediu para os patamares de 2005. A democracia, em vários lugares, se vê ameaçada pelo extremismo ou corroída pela xenofobia. Estamos, mais uma vez na história, sob o risco de uma guerra nuclear. O mundo andou para trás. Muitas das respostas que buscamos para construir um mundo mais equitativo estão na África. A Covid-19 ceifou milhões de vidas. Mas apesar dos obstáculos injustificáveis ao acesso a vacinas, a África apresentou taxas de mortalidade muito baixas. Enquanto preocupações de segurança limitam cada vez mais o compartilhamento de tecnologias, a União Africana lança estratégias de transformação digital e centenas de startups e centros de inovação surgem na África. Ao mesmo tempo em que proliferam medidas unilaterais que ameaçam a integridade do regime comercial, o continente africano se transforma na maior área de livre comércio do planeta, com 1,3 bilhão de pessoas e um PIB combinado de 3 trilhões e 400 bilhões de dólares. À medida que órgãos multilaterais falham ao responder às ameaças à paz, a União Africana assume crescente protagonismo na resolução de conflitos. De um lado, alianças excludentes renascem e acirram tensões, e de outro, países africanos e latino-americanos se unem para preservar a zona de paz e a cooperação Atlântico-Sul. Mas assim, como em outras regiões na África, também ficam evidentes os grandes constrangimentos impostos a países em desenvolvimento. As promessas da globalização não se cumpriram. Muitas nações se veem hoje tolhidas por dívidas impagáveis. Nos últimos anos, o volume de recursos direcionados a países do sul global, via comércio e investimentos, vem diminuindo. A maior parte do mundo em desenvolvimento depende da exportação de commodities, cuja demanda é volátil, e da importação de
goods importments of first needs are very difficult because the prices went up. At the same time, financial institutions impose high interest rates and conditionalities that narrow the action space of the state. It is impossible to promote sustainable development if the national budget or the public budget is consumed by the foreign debt service. To fight the climate change offers us an opportunity to rethink financing models, trade, and development. The energy transition cannot bring back again the exploitation relationship of the colonial past. We need solutions that diversify and add value to the production of the developing countries. The most evident signal that the planet is becoming a place with more inequality is the growth of hunger and poverty. And this is unacceptable. Although its magnitude, these problems are not treated with the urgency that they deserve. The emissions of the 1% richest part of the world population are 100 times higher than the 50% poorest. As the Kenyan environmentalist Wangari Maathai, winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, we quote, "We would like to put the blame on the poor for the destruction of the environment, but frequently the powerful ones, including the governments, are the true responsible," end of quote. We have sustainable forms to enhance the agricultural output, create income, and offer social protection. And this was what we discussed in the Amazon Summit meeting in the city of Belém in Brazil, in the Amazon region. And this is what we want to discuss with the other countries that have tropical basins like Congo and the Borno-Mekong. Brazil will take over the chair of the G20 in December, and we want to put back the inequality reduction as the core of the international agenda, to reduce inequalities. We cannot do that without greater representation from Africa. So that's why we advocate the entrance of the African Union as member of the G20. Now, with my trip to South Africa, and then I will follow to Angola and to São Tomé and Príncipe, I intend to open a new cooperation agenda between Brazil and Africa. Let's go back to our universal vocation and rebuild our historical ties with the developing countries. Prosperity is only full when it is shared. The presence here of dozens of leaders from the global south shows that the world is much more complex than the mindset that came from the World War, the Cold War, that some wants to reinstall. And instead of following the rationale of competition that imposes automatic alignments and that will foster mistrust, we have to strengthen our collaboration within the global south. The world with welfare and well-being for all is only possible if we have an international order that will be more inclusive and more solidarity. Thank you very much.
Your Excellencies, heads of state and government, colleagues, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to express my gratitude for the South African chairship for the arrangement of this representative summit of the BRICS Plus outreach. This format of communication is of utmost importance. It offers us a great opportunity to discuss in substance the relevant topics of mutual interest with those countries who largely share the attitudes of the five with the like-minded states. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you, dear friends. We all stand for the building of a new multipolar world order, a one that is truly balanced and takes into account the sovereign interests of as many nations as possible, and opens possibilities for implementation of various development models, while making it possible to preserve national cultures and identities and traditions. Let me stress, BRICS is not competing with anyone and is not opposing itself to anyone, but it's also obvious that this objective process, the process of emerging of a new world order, still has fierce opponents who try to slow down this process, to contain the emergence of new independent centers of development in the world. The countries of the so-called Golden Billion are doing everything in order to preserve the previous unipolar world order. They are comfortable with it. It benefits them. They try to substitute the world order by the rules-based order, although no one has seen these rules. And they use these rules for their narrow interests, and they adjust them to fit their political interests at any time in accordance with the interests of certain states. In effect, it is the same colonialism in a new package. By the way, it doesn't look so good, and modern-day colonizators, under the guise of benign mottos of human rights and so on, try to resolve their problems at someone else's extent by pumping out resources of other countries. The president of Brazil mentioned the debt burden of developing countries. Well, of course, on the one hand, they pump out huge volumes of resources, and on the other hand, they create a sort of credit relations that paying these loans off is almost impossible, and it looks not like loans but as contributions. The world order is threatened by the radical neoliberalism imposed by some countries that is aimed at eliminating traditional values that matter for all of us. I'm talking about the value of family, respect for national and religious traditions. They try to do so to serve their own interests, and some countries even justify extremism, xenophobia, and connive with terrorists. The global majority, represented by countries present here, is getting increasingly tired of all sorts of pressure or manipulations. But it is ready for equal and mutually respectful cooperation. That is the attitude taken by the BRICS countries. That's how we treat the development of multifaceted relations with many countries present here and other interested countries on the regional and global basis, including such regional structures as CIS, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Caribbean countries, the Gulf countries. Bearing in mind that most African countries participate in today's event, today BRICS focus is on Africa. And we in Russia can only welcome it. We believe it is right, especially so as it is the Republic of South Africa that holds the chairship. Many dear friends, we met with many of you quite recently in St. Petersburg at the second Russia-Africa Summit, where we held constructive discussions. In St. Petersburg, we reaffirmed that Russia and Africa have ever stronger friendly ties and mutually beneficial relations. The foundation for these relations was laid in the times when the African continent was struggling for its independence. We value that African countries have a friendly attitude to the Russian country, and in its turn, Russia is interested in further deepening its multifaceted ties with the African continent. We will actively promote these ties, translate them in practical cooperation in various fields. Our particular focus lies on providing African countries and the world market with grain and fertilizers. We have all opportunities to make our contribution to the global efforts to resolve the hunger problem and not to allow the food crisis. So we can only welcome that for the second year in a row we have record crop yields. And as I already mentioned, in the coming months, as a priority assistance project, we'll allocate 25 to 50 tons of grain to African countries, and we'll ship it free of charge. That's what we mentioned in St. Petersburg. Right now we are concluding negotiations with our African countries on these issues. We are doing so despite the obstacles created by others, in particular illegitimate sanctions imposed against our exports that complicate insurance and settlement processes. Our African friends can rest assured that Russia will always remain a reliable food supply and will continue to support the countries most in need. Russia takes a responsible attitude to its obligations in terms of energy exports. Largely, these exports are oriented on the emerging markets. Russian raw materials and fuels make it possible for the friendly countries, including African countries, to contain price rises and enhance agricultural and industrial production, thus strengthening their energy security and economic resilience. According to some estimates, by 2050, world's population will rise by 1.7 billion people, and the energy supply will rise by 22%. So it's obvious that for the foreseeable future, there is no alternative to coal or hydrocarbons, meaning that the energy transition that is necessary, the energy transition to low-emission economy, should take place in a gradual and balanced manner. It should be well calculated. taken into account national peculiarities and possibilities of the respective countries. By the way, some countries are already facing the effects of the efforts of the mistakes they committed when planning this energy transition, and problem is exacerbating. We see a solution in effective use of all energy resources while implementing clean technologies, and obviously, together with our BRICS partners, we stand for strengthening the equal and technological cooperation in such fields as the use of renewable energy sources and in other important areas, including development of new types of atomic reactors, promotion of hydrogen technologies, and so on. By the way, in these fields, Africa is our priority partner. Currently, in different fields, we are working on about 30 projects with participation of Russia. In 16 states, we are operating in a very active manner. In Egypt, for example, Rosatom is working on construction of Daba, a nuclear power plant, and the total capacity of our energy projects amounts to 3.7 gigawatt. Over the past 2 years, there has been an increase by 2.6% of the exports of Russian raw materials, petrol products, and liquefied natural gas. 2.6% rise. The exports of food, energy resources, cooperation in other economic fields, as well as in the fields of culture, education, sports. All of these applies not only to Africa, but also to other regions, and naturally to the countries invited for the BRICS outreach countries.
We will build constructive win-win relations with everyone. We will enhance partnership, and our country has a lot to offer. In this regard, let me note that next year, Russia will assume BRICS chairship, and upon instruction of our colleagues, we will ensure the working conditions and the work with the countries that cooperate with us within the BRICS Plus and BRICS Outreach formats. Dear colleagues, by way of concluding, I'm confident that the current meeting would be very useful. It will help bolster friendly relations between the BRICS 5 countries, but next year there will be an increasing number of new members. It will help galvanize cooperation on various tracks. Thank you for your attention.
Very much, President Putin. I now want to call upon Honorable Prime Minister of India, Mr. Narendra Modi, to take the floor.
Excellency, अफ्रीका की भूमि पर आप सभी मित्रों के बीच उपस्थित होकर
I wholeheartedly thank President Ramaphosa that in the BRICS Outreach Summit, he has given us the opportunity to share views with countries of Africa, Asia, and Latin America. In the last 2 days, in all of our discussions in BRICS, we have laid emphasis on the priorities and concerns of the countries in the Global South. We believe that according special attention to these issues by BRICS is a need of the current times. We have also decided to expand the BRICS Forum. We welcome all the new member countries. This will make global institutions and forums more representative and inclusive, and this is one step towards such efforts of ours. When we use the term Global South, it is not just a new diplomatic term. In our shared history, we have together opposed colonialism and apartheid. It was in this land of Africa that Mahatma Gandhi developed the powerful concepts of nonviolence and peaceful resistance, tested them here, and then used them in India's freedom struggle. His thinking and ideas inspired great leaders like Nelson Mandela. Based on this strong history, we have given a new shape to our modern relations. Excellencies, India has accorded high priority to its relations with Africa. Along with high-level meetings, we have opened 16 new embassies and high commissions in Africa. Today, India is Africa's 4th largest trade partner and 5th largest investor. Whether it is power projects in Sudan, Burundi, and Rwanda, or sugar plants in Ethiopia and Malawi. Whether it is technology parks in Mozambique, Côte d'Ivoire, and Eswatini, or campuses established by Indian universities in Tanzania and Uganda. India has always accorded priority to capacity building and infrastructure development in African countries. Under the Agenda 2063, India is a reliable and close partner in Africa's journey to make Africa a global powerhouse of the future. In order to tackle the digital divide in Africa, we have granted more than 15,000 scholarships in the area of teleeducation and telemedicine. We have constructed defense academies and colleges in Nigeria, Ethiopia, and in Tanzania.
We have deployed teams to Botswana, Namibia, Uganda, Lesotho, Zambia, Mauritius, Seychelles, and Tanzania to provide training. Approximately 4,400 Indian peacekeepers, that include women as well, are contributing to restoring peace and stability in Africa. In the fight against terrorism and piracy as well, we are also working together with African countries. During the difficult times caused by the COVID pandemic, we supplied food products and vaccines to several countries. We are now also working together with African countries on joint manufacturing of COVID and other vaccines. Whether it is cyclones in Mozambique and Malawi or floods in Madagascar, India has always stood shoulder to shoulder with Africa as a first responder. Excellencies, from Latin America to Central Asia, from West Asia to Southeast Asia, from the Indo-Pacific to the Indo-Atlantic, India sees all countries as one family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which means the whole world is a family, has been for thousands of years the basis of our lifestyle. This is also the theme of our G20 presidency. In order to mainstream the concerns of the Global South, we have invited 3 African countries and several developing countries as guest countries to the G20 summit. India has also proposed permanent membership of the African Union to the G20. Excellencies, I believe that BRICS and all the friendly countries present here today can work together to strengthen a multipolar world in order to make global institutions representative and to keep them relevant. They can help ensure progress in their reforms. Counterterrorism, environment security, climate action, cybersecurity, food and health security, energy security, building resilient supply chains are matters we all have equal interest in. They represent unlimited opportunities for cooperation. I invite all of you to participate in our international initiatives such as the International Solar Alliance, One Sun, One World, One Grid, the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, One Earth, One Health, the Big Cat Alliance, and the Global Center for Traditional Medicine. I invite all of you to join India's digital public infrastructure stack to benefit from it for your development. Yesterday, we will be very pleased to share with you our experience and capabilities in this area. I am sure that our shared efforts will give us new confidence to address all challenges together. I once again express my gratitude to all of you and in particular to President Ramaphosa for this opportunity. Thank you.
Prime Minister Modi. It now gives me pleasure to ask President Xi Jinping, President of the People's Republic of China, to take the floor.
Your Excellency President Ramaphosa, dear colleagues, let me begin by thanking President Ramaphosa for preparing the dialogues. I am delighted to join you all in this discussion on global development. Development embodies our people's aspiration for a better life. It is the top priority for developing countries and a timeless theme for humanity. As the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is due for a midterm review this year, the delivery of most SDGs remains slow. This is a cause for concern. And the global development endeavor faces formidable challenges. The international community must pursue the larger interests of all countries, respond to people's concerns, and restore development to the center of the international agenda. The representation and voice of developing countries in global governance should be increased, and developing countries be supported in realizing better development.
it is also important to uphold true multilateralism, forge a global development partnership, and create a secure and stable international environment for shared development. Colleagues, over the years, China has stood in solidarity with fellow developing countries through thick and thin. China has been and will always remain a member of developing countries. I proposed the Global Development Initiative precisely for the purpose of calling on the world to stay focused on development and lending impetus to the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. Last year, China held the first high-level dialogue on global development, where a host of measures for development cooperation were unveiled. Encouraging progress has been made since then. We have put development first and allocated more resources. China has set up a global development and South-South cooperation fund with a total funding of $4 billion. And Chinese financial institutions will soon set up a special fund of $10 billion dedicated to the implementation of the GDI. We have taken results-oriented actions and deepened practical cooperation from Asia to Africa, from Pacific Island countries to the Caribbean. Over 200 cooperation projects have come to fruition, and cooperation mechanisms are growing in areas such as poverty reduction, education, and health. We have unleashed the power of innovation and built up momentum for development. Under the GDI, we have prioritized green development, new type industrialization, the digital economy, and some other key areas, and pursued a partnership on new industrial revolution to boost high-quality development. We have tided over difficulties together and made development more resilient. Food and energy security bear on the economy of a country and the well-being of its people. We have launched a China FAO South-South Cooperation Trust Fund, implemented the Food Production Enhancement Action, and provided food assistance to and shared agro-tech with many countries. We have also initiated a global clean energy cooperation partnership with a view to achieving energy security. China is a friend that Africa can count on. Over the past decade, China has provided a large amount of development assistance to Africa and helped build more than 6,000 kilometers of railway, over 6,000 kilometers of highway, and 80+ large power facilities on the continent. Going forward, China will carry out more cooperation with African countries to support Africa in enhancing its own capacity for development. Specific measures will be taken, such as providing satellite mapping data products, implementing a smart customs cooperation partnership, and launching with UNESCO a GDI for Africa's Future action plan to support sustainable development in Africa. Colleagues, a Chinese adage reads, "Victory is ensured when people pool their strength. Success is secured when people put their heads together." Let us stay committed and united to build a community of shared development and make sure that in the process of global modernization, no country is left behind. Thank you.
And I now call upon Secretary General Antonio Guterres to address us.
Distinguished heads of state and government, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by thanking President Cyril Ramaphosa. We take great inspiration from the Rainbow Nation's extraordinary path to unity through action and justice. That is what our world needs. Unity for action and unity for justice. We are confronting existential challenges. The climate crisis is spiraling out of control. A global cost of living crisis is raging. Poverty, hunger, and inequalities are growing against the objectives of the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development. New technologies are raising red flags without a global architecture to deal with them. And geopolitical divides and conflicts are multiplying with profound global implications, especially the impacts from the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Excellencies, we are moving towards a multipolar world, and that is a positive thing. But multipolarity in itself is not enough to guarantee a peaceful or just global community. To be a factor of peace, equity, and justice in international relations, multipolarity must be supported by strong and effective multilateral institutions. Look no further than the situation in Europe at the dawn of the last century. Europe was multipolar, but it lacked strong multilateral mechanisms, and the result was World War I. As the global community moves towards multipolarity, we desperately need, and I have been vigorously advocating for, a strengthened and reformed multilateral architecture based on the UN Charter and international law. Today's global governance structures reflect yesterday's world. They were largely created in the aftermath of World War II, when many African countries were still ruled by colonial powers and were not even at the table. And this is particularly true of the Security Council of the United Nations and the Bretton Woods institutions. For multilateral institutions to remain truly universal, they must reform to reflect today's power and economic realities and not the power and economic realities of the post-Second World War. In the absence of such reform, fragmentation is inevitable. And we cannot afford a world with a divided global economy and financial system, with diverging strategies on technology, including artificial intelligence, and with conflicting security frameworks. The IMF estimates that such a fracture could cost 7% of global GDP, a cost that would be disproportionately borne by low-income countries, mainly in Africa. And so I've come to Johannesburg with a simple message. In a fracturing world with overwhelming crises, there is simply no alternative to cooperation. We must urgently restore trust and reinvigorate multilateralism for the 21st century. And this requires the courage to compromise in the reforms that are necessary for the common good. And it requires full respect for the UN Charter, international law, universal values, and all human rights, social, cultural, economic, civil, and political. And it requires much greater solidarity. Of course, none of this is easy, but it is essential. And it is essential especially for Africa. The African continent, a historic victim of slavery and colonialism, continues to confront grave injustices. On average, African countries pay 4 times more for borrowing than the United States and 8 times more than the wealthiest European countries. And African countries accounts for just 4% of global greenhouse gas emissions, but it is an epicenter of climate chaos, suffering disproportionately impacts of climate change. And so looking ahead, I saw 2 priorities for action and justice. First, on the economic front. Redesigning today's outdated, dysfunctional and unfair global financial architecture is essential, but I know it won't happen overnight. Yet we can and must take practical action now. The Sustainable Development Goals stimulus I have proposed, an effective debt workout mechanism, and other steps necessary to multiply the resources available for developing countries are vital for sustainable development in Africa and to give options to African governments to support the development of their peoples. We must also drastically step up climate action and climate justice. I have put forward the Climate Solidarity Pact, in which developed countries provide financial and technical support to help emerging economies in Africa and beyond to promote an equitable and just transition to renewable energy. And I have presented an acceleration agenda to boost these efforts, with developed countries committing to reach net zero emissions as close as possible to 2040 and developing countries as close as possible to 2050. And developed countries must also finally keep their promises to developing countries by meeting the 100 billion goal, doubling adaptation finance, replenishing the Green Climate Fund, and operationalizing the Loss and Damage Fund this year. And as a matter of justice, Africa must be considered a priority in all these efforts. Excellencies, we will not solve our common challenges in a fragmented way. Together, let us work to advance the power of universal action, the imperative for justice, and the promise of a better future, and I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Secretary General of the United Nations. Your Excellencies, there are almost 65 of us, and this forum has been designed so that everyone should be able to make a statement. I will not be making any commentary in between to ensure that we do conserve time. I similarly would like to request that when we speak, we should remind ourselves of the time limit that we have put aside for each one of us to speak. So I do beg for your indulgence in that regard. My next speaker will be His Excellency Azali Assoumani, President of the Union of Comoros, but also the Chair of the African Union. President Assoumani.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président et chers frères. Monsieur Antonio Guterres, Secrétaire général de l'Organisation des Nations Unies,
representative of the United Nations, dear colleagues, and then head of a government, all protocol observed, I greet you in the name of God. It's an honor for me to take part in this gathering, and then to bring the contribution of the African Union to this exchange, to this forum. And I'm hoping that this is going to be very fruitful for the countries that we're representing here. So allow me, before I get into the subject, to extend our thanks, our gratitude to President Ramaphosa, to the South African government and the South African people for the warm welcome that was given to us on our arrival in this country. So we're also expressing our gratitude for all the measures that have been taken to facilitate our meetings and then make our stay here in South Africa most enjoyable. The land of Nelson Mandela, our biggest leader, a figure who's making the continent very proud. So, dear delegates, the African Union that I have the honor to come and represent here this year, 2023, so is giving a very important meaning to work with countries in BRICS. So it considering that as a very most important opportunity for countries to explore together the areas of cooperation that would be beneficial to all of us. And then for that, to see how the bloc can also expand to other African countries, it's a process that will contribute to multiply benefits associated to this cooperation. So various capacity of BRICS in various sectors, it's a very important benefit that will foster the growth and the development of the African continent. So today, Africa is faced with many challenges, especially to the issue of food security, which is something we cannot accept because our continent, which possess 70% of arable land in the world, is registering a deficit every year in the area of food security, ranging up to $200 billion. So BRICS, with is a multiform capacity, can help the Africa to become independent in the area of food security by putting in place new technologies to improve the sector of agriculture. So Africa is also faced with the issue of industrialization because the continent has got enormous reserves of raw material, but unfortunately they do not have a capacity to exploit and then transform these minerals on our African continent. So the collaboration between BRICS and Africa would allow to develop production units and transformation units in the area of a big program of industrialization that will favor the green transition. Finally, on the pharmaceutical sector, BRICS has got a capacity to develop a partnership with Africa in order to promote research in the pharmaceutical area, but as well encourage the increase of pharmaceutical products. The example of vaccines in South Africa, especially during COVID, that has demonstrated that African countries, not only they've got techniques and necessary technologies, but they also have a capacity to contribute to the world efforts to improve the So I'd like to take this opportunity to reiterate the availability of the African Union in this partnership between BRICS and the African Union. It's a frank partnership that will last longer and win-win. So, ladies and gentlemen, trade relations between Africa and BRICS are multidimensional. So they are illustrated in many advantages that are linked in the South-South Summit. It's important to underline that BRICS represent one of the major trade partners in our continent, and our economic weight constitutes it's something major that cannot be compared with something else in the world. So African countries will wish in the area of this partnership and then funding that will be created by BRICS, such as the new development bank, which the objectives is to fund development project while underlining sustainability. At the moment where our continent is trying to go through some reforms in world financial infrastructure, we are urging BRICS to play a role of a pressure group for those reforms, and also structural reforms and deeper. The world financial architecture are very important to respond to the needs that are not being taken account into the world architecture. With regard to debt, that is putting African countries in trouble. So the African Union has put in place a working group in order to propose means so that to see how to sort out this African debt. So that will be put in place by BRICS to benefit countries in our continent if those funds became operational. In fact, this would allow African countries to access loans with better conditions of repayment, which will be advantageous for countries that are facing prohibitive cost to the world financial market. Beyond all this, so that is linking the two parties, our continent is the potential to offer to BRICS benefit of opportunities, especially in the area of geopolitics, economics, security, and cultural sector. It's the case of the free trade area that are offering to the countries of BRICS unique opportunities to reinvigorate their effort to foster trade relations with emerging and developing countries. In this regard, the political commitment of Africa in favor of the free trade, the African trade area, as it was last year, the year 2023, as being the year of the acceleration of the implementation. I'm inviting BRICS to be more interested on this instrument, given that from the report from this year, the investment activities and trade of BRICS, they are going to offer important opportunities for the major agricultural sector that is not being exploited in Africa. Furthermore, the access of Africa in G20 that will offer also an opportunity to Africa, a central platform to amplify its position on world economic issues for a more inclusive multilateralism. It will also constitute an opportunity for the continent to work with BRICS in favor of the advent of a world economic governance that is more fair and just. All the actions that we are undertaking in the favor of BRICS and the development cannot last without peace and stability in the world. So I would also like to draw our attention on the agency so that we can seek together means to try and put an end to conflict in Africa, in particular for all extremism, the change of unconstitutional changes that is compromising the peace and stability and prosperity of our continent. So we also need to continue to encourage Russia and Ukraine to put an end to war that is opposing them, given that consequences of this war is not only affecting Europe, but is also affecting the world in general. So, ladies and gentlemen, opportunities given to us today to put together our effort to continue to make this world more just and prosperous by working together in a synergy to build new partnership, frank and then balance based on complementarity and not on a form of dependence. And only with that we can constitute a very important force in the world scene, so that we can deal with challenges that our countries are facing. and then to reach a peace, stability, and economic growth. I thank you.
Merci. Thank you, Your Excellence, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, President of South Africa. Dear brother, Excellence, Head of State and Government, member and friend of BRICS, Your Excellency, Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of United Nations, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and participants, all protocol observed. I render grace. I say grace to God who has all gathered us in this space in Johannesburg. Allow me to express my deepest gratitude to the government and to the South African people for having invited my government. The theme with the impulsion of Africa at the center of exchange, as well have for the warm welcome to my mem and my delegation. Excellence, ladies and gentlemen, this summit comes at a particular moment. The world is experiencing an economic crisis, geopolitical and security as well. This summit offers an
supported by there are many friends to think of the collective response with the challenges that we are faced with by putting in place a principle of mutual respect, equality, solidarity, and then openness, and then inclusivity. As opposed to what others can think, I consider that the coalition with BRICS it's a way to fast-track the common project and then to expand the circle of friends and also members. Though this coalition is there to create an order in diversity in order to face world challenges of the moment. Burundi is subscribing to the main conclusions that came out on sectorial meetings aiming in the promotion of a South-South cooperation, the reinforcement of mutual partnership with Africa in a multipolar world, also in the area of a free trade area. So the enlargement of multilateralism to stimulate the reforms in governance and in world institutions. Excellence and ladies and gentlemen, Burundi is the conviction that its independence can only be effective without a real economic independence. That's the reason why, on the basis of opportunities that Burundi is offering, so we have set ourselves a new vision to make Burundi an emerging country for the horizon 2040 and then a developed country to the 2060 horizon. This vision is opposed on the commitment of the Burundian government to develop and diversify the national economy, and then that is stimulating the production in order to increase exports. To achieve that, Burundi would like to link a new partnership and then reinforce a partnership, and that is mutually beneficial with members and then friends of the BRICS in order to improve our performance. In the mining sector, the Burundi is still not exploited. That the reason it's one of the sector that is promising, on which Burundi is counting to improve its economy. Technology and then manufacturing industry remain big challenges in my country, even though we have a large labor force in the country. I'd like to say the government of Burundi is ready to cooperate with serious partners who would wish to support development efforts and then invest in Burundi to fast-track socio-economic development in Burundi. We are hoping in a fructuous collaboration with the new development bank in order to increase the production of energy, development of infrastructure, digital economy, and then the exploitation of mineral resources. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I came to participate in this summit of BRICS because I strongly believe that it's an opportunity in the world. It's a new chapter in the world, in the history of a world economy, in the manner that it's going to open several opportunities and then a new paradigm. There's a lot to be said in such circumstances, but allow me to mention the significant changes are taking place in the world. So my country is on the side of those who are calling for new reforms of the world governance, in particular in a decision-making institution such as the United Nations Security Council. So we are hoping that the voice of member and friend of BRICS will be finally heard. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, my country is reaffirming its commitment to play its role in this changing of the new world order, to have a world that is a peaceful, where there's equality and prosperous. So we are also reiterating our thanks to all members of BRICS for the invitation that they've extended to us to come and participate. So we are hoping that the conclusions of these meetings would be beneficial for BRICS and then also the world. I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Su Excelencia Cyril Ramaphosa,
we also greatly appreciate the fact that this meeting is taking place in Africa, the cradle of a part of our ancestors, which fundamentally nourishes the very essence of the Cuban identity. Our satisfaction is even greater because it brings us to South Africa, a country with which we are united by historic ties or of brotherhood. Nearly 400,000 compatriots contributed to the struggle against apartheid in African lands. 2,289 of our internationalist combatants fell heroically, writing with their sacrifice one of the most beautiful pages in the history of solidarity among people. In Sister Angola, we have quoted a well-known African proverb that today we would like to recall. The footprints of those who walk together can never be erased. In the case of South Africa and Cuba, those footprints are as solid and indelible as the memory of the historic leaders of our nations. We can never forge the embrace of Nelson Mandela and Fidel Castro, as they met here and demanded each other's reunion, as only happens between very dear brothers. I attend this dialogue with the enormous responsibility that it represents for Cuba to chair the group of 7-7 and China, the largest and most diverse grouping of developing nations. We are 134 countries, 2/3 of the members of the UN, where almost 80% of the planet's population lives, facing the colossal challenges of an incredibly unequal world, where exclusion and poverty have multiplied after 2 years of pandemics, followed by dramatic conflicts. In the last 10 years, the nations of the South have seen their foreign debt already more than pay off double. Unilateral coercive measures are on the rise. More than 3 billion people are affected by the degradation of ecosystems. More than 1 million species of plants and animals are in danger of extinction, according to the Secretary General's message of World's Environment Day. If we don't act immediately, we will give our children and grandchildren a planet not only unrecognizable to those of us from the previous centuries, but sadly doomed to become uninhabitable, impossible to habitate. 7 years away from the deadline set for the fulfillment of the Sustainable Development Goals of the 2030 Agenda, the outlook is discouraging. Half of the 169 agreed targets are far or very far from being met. More than 30% of them have not experienced any progress, or even worse, show setbacks compared to 2015, according to the most recent United Nations report. The developed countries of the West and the large transnationals have designed an international order that does not take into account to all the progress of our nations of the South, and it is only effective for meager minorities. The G77 and the BRICS have the responsibility and the possibility to act to change this unjust world order. It is not an option, it is the only alternative. Today, no one can question the growing authority of BRICS. That's why we do not hesitate to welcome its eventual enlargement, which will contribute to strengthen its relevance and representativeness. It has been a historical demand of the G77, as it is also of BRICS, to undertake a real transformation of the deeply unjust, anachronistic, and dysfunctional international finance architecture. We firmly believe that the new development bank created by BRICS can and must become an alternative to the current financial institutions, which for almost a century have applied draconian recipes to profit from the reserves of the South and reproduce their schemes of subjugation and domination. We especially welcome the appointment of our dear Dilma Rousseff and head of his entity, and the praiseworthy initiative of BRICS to create a broad-based foreign currency reserve mechanism to guarantee certainty and stability to the South. The extension of these mechanisms to other countries will certainly help to alleviate the imbalances of the current monetary system. The establishment of mutual credit lines in local currencies by the Bank of BRICS countries and the possibility of creating a single currency for their operations were also initiatives that could be applied in relation with other developing countries to reduce the abusive monopoly of the U.S. currency, which reinforces and guarantees equal harmful to the rest of the world. The BRICS countries are world leaders in agricultural production, concentrating about 1/3 of the food produced globally. Their joint action with the rest of the developing countries will be a substantial contribution to the elimination of the hunger, which today affects more than 700 million people in the world. On climate change, we emphasize the strategic value of effective coordination between the BRICS and G77 to safeguard the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities in the implementation of the Framework Convention and the Paris Agreement. At COP28, which will take place this year in Dubai, for the first time, a G77 Leaders Summit will be held, convened by Cuba to strengthen strategic coordination. scientific and technical development is today monopolized by a club of countries that monopolize most of the patents, technologies, research centers, and promote the drain of talent from our countries. The G77 and BRICS must and can do more to change that situation, and in that spirit, Cuba has convened a summit of heads of state and government of the Group of 77 and China on science, technology, and innovation as a premise for development, to be held on September 15th in Havana. We welcome you there. To move toward to a more just and sustainable future, the time for collective action is not tomorrow, it is now. We firmly believe in the power of unity and diversity, and that it is time to act together in defense of historical grievances that, because they have not been addressed in time, have multiplied the problems facing our nations today. And since we are in the Rainbow Nations, which has overcome the hatred of the past, integrating its rich diversity of cultures, languages, and religious beliefs, let us assume all the precepts of the wise African humanist philosophy of Ubuntu, the ethics of caring for others, which in the face of selfishness and individualisms promotes a form of life of solidarity, fraternity, and respect in which no one is left behind. The G77 and the BRICS have the opportunity to generate a historic transformation for the sake of the future generations. Let's do so. Thank you very much.
President Canal, I now have the honor to call upon His Excellency Ismail Omar Guelleh, the President of the Republic of Djibouti and Chair of the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD.
Thank you, Chair. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa, Excellencies, heads of states and governments, distinguished guests, leaders and guests. Firstly, I would like to express my appreciation to His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, the President of the Republic of South Africa, and the people of South Africa for their warm welcome and hospitality during our visit to this beautiful country. On behalf of all members of IGAD, as well as myself, I would like to extend my gratitude to you, Mr. Chairman, for inviting me to attend this 15th BRICS Summit held in Africa under African chairmanship with a focus on our continent. The partnerships between BRICS and Africa goes beyond convenience. It is a strategic imperative. Together, we have the power to reshape the landscape, promote inclusive growth, and eradicate poverty. By joining forces, we can create a world where no nation is left behind, where prosperity is shared equally, and where sustainable development becomes reality. Africa possesses resources, and when combined with the technological capabilities and investment potential of BRICS, it opens up unparalleled opportunities for both regions. By allocating resources to infrastructure, energy, agriculture, and manufacturing sectors, we can generate employment opportunities, enhance productivity, and uplift millions from poverty. This is a moment to seize in order to establish connections, promote trade activities, and enable technology transfer that will ensure Africa's emergence as a global economic powerhouse. Djibouti stands as a committed partner and ally to BRICS nations. We are also supporters of the African Union-led efforts toward economic integration through the implementation of the African Comprehensive Free Trade Agreement. It is a step that places Africa in its rightful position within the global order. We appreciate your efforts to advance and strengthen the partnership between BRICS and the continent. In summits, we have already identified key areas of focus that contribute to a mutually beneficial partnership. Your leadership in enhancing the relationship between BRICS and Africa serves as a motivation for us to make substantial contributions towards our shared goals and interests. Dear Chairman, I eagerly commend the BRICS partnership for creating a platform that offers an opportunity to diversify the expand the global economic landscape. Undoubtedly, BRICS is a force with politically and economically. It is a success story evident from the growing number of countries aspiring to join this group, as well as the commendable performance of the new Development Bank with its extensive portfolio of projects aimed at maximizing development impact. I am delighted to announce that IGAD fully aligns with and supports the priorities outlined by the BRICS Chair for 2023. Specifically, Africa and IGAD aim to mobilize investment in order to develop infrastructure that connects parts of
the world today. We recall the Bandung Conference of 1955, when Asian and African nations demanded a greater voice for the developing countries in world affairs. The conference called for the recognition of the equality of all nations, both large and small. We still share that common vision of a fair and a just world. We still seek to overcome polarity and division. We want a world without barriers between North, South, East, and West. We still seek a world in which we work together, underpinned by mutual respect. Through the 15th BRICS Summit and this dialogue, we should strive to advance the Bandung spirit of unity, friendship, and cooperation. In South Africa, we have a word that we use to describe friendship, cooperation, and we call that Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a practice based on the understanding that our success, our prosperity, and well-being depends on the success, prosperity, and well-being of others. That is why we also use another South African term about our identities, whilst respecting the identities of others. We often say, I am because you are. And that is a recognition, and that is the respect that we want to accord to one another. We see the BRICS partnership as a catalyst for global growth and development and response to the needs of all nations. It is the right of Africa and the entire global South to fully reap the benefits of global trade and investment. Without trade and investment, our economies cannot thrive and our people's material conditions cannot improve. As the African continent, we are determined that the continent's substantial resources are harnessed for the benefit as well as for the development of the people of Africa. The African Continental Free Trade Area, once fully operational, will unlock the benefits of the continental market and generate substantial opportunities for African countries, but also for other countries. To make use of these opportunities, Africa is looking to BRICS partnership to unlock infrastructure and development financing. This was part of the founding vision of the new development bank. This bank is playing a leading role in efforts to increase the resilience of the global South and to bring fairness to the global trading system, the financial system, and to strengthen BRICS currencies. We have to reform global economic, financial, and political, as well as the multilateral trading system, so that we can create a conducive environment for fair trade. While many countries of the global South are seeking significant progress in industrialization, in technological development, in innovation, and the digital economy, they are not fully reaping the economic benefits of their efforts. By working together, by sharing skills and capabilities, by mobilizing resources, we will be able to give renewed impetus to the global growth and sustainable development. We need to move beyond expressions of solidarity towards inclusion, mutually beneficial economic cooperation as well. We trust that this dialogue that is being attended by some 65 countries will provide leadership, vision, and hope as we strive together for a better Africa and for a better world. It is for this reason that I welcome you all warmly, and I welcome you all on behalf of the BRICS leaders who have just issued their declaration, which outlines a number of important aspects. The BRICS leaders have also taken a decision to expand the BRICS membership, and that announcement having been made, we welcome those new members, but at the same time, that is the first phase, and other phases will follow, and we welcome various other countries in the partnership of the BRICS countries. So thank you very much, and thank you for being here. I thank you. Having done that, I now would like to invite President Lula da Silva, the President of the Republic of Brazil, to take the floor.
Obrigado, Presidente Ramaphosa. Obrigado, companheiros presidentes dos países que compõem os BRICS. Eu gostaria de cumprimentar o presidente Ramaphosa por dedicar este debate à parceria dos BRICS com o Sul Global em especial com a África. É hora de revitalizar a cooperação entre os países em desenvolvimento. Vemos hoje o surgimento de novos desafios que se somam aos problemas de longa data. Fomos atingidos por uma pandemia, por novos conflitos e por uma grave emergência climática, no momento em que trabalhávamos pela implementação dos Objetivos de Desenvolvimento Sustentável. Quando adotada a Agenda 2030, traçava rota para um futuro melhor. Hoje, metade das metas está atrasada e houve estagnação ou retrocesso em quase 1/3 das metas. A insegurança alimentar regrediu para os patamares de 2005. A democracia, em vários lugares, se vê ameaçada pelo extremismo ou corroída pela xenofobia. Estamos, mais uma vez na história, sob o risco de uma guerra nuclear. O mundo andou para trás. Muitas das respostas que buscamos para construir um mundo mais equitativo estão na África. A Covid-19 ceifou milhões de vidas, mas apesar dos obstáculos injustificáveis ao acesso a vacinas, a África apresentou taxas de mortalidade muito baixas. Enquanto preocupações de segurança limitam cada vez mais o compartilhamento de tecnologias, a União Africana lança estratégias de transformação digital e centenas de startups e centros de inovação surgem na África. Ao mesmo tempo em que proliferam medidas unilaterais que ameaçam a integridade do regime comercial, o continente africano se transforma na maior área de livre comércio do planeta, com 1,3 bilhão de pessoas e um PIB combinado de 3,4 trilhões de dólares. À medida que órgãos multilaterais falham ao responder às ameaças à paz, a União Africana assume crescente protagonismo na resolução de conflitos. De um lado, alianças excludentes renascem e acirram tensões, e de outro, países africanos e latino-americanos se unem para preservar a zona de paz e a cooperação Atlântico-Sul. Mas assim, como em outras regiões na África, também ficam evidentes os grandes constrangimentos impostos a países em desenvolvimento. As promessas da globalização não se cumpriram. Muitas nações se veem hoje tolhidas por dívidas impagáveis. Nos últimos anos, o volume de recursos direcionados a países do sul global, via comércio e investimentos, vem diminuindo. A maior parte do mundo em desenvolvimento depende da exportação de commodities, cuja demanda é volátil, e da importação de
goods importments of first needs are very difficult because the prices went up. At the same time, financial institutions impose high interest rates and conditionalities that narrow the action space of the state. It is impossible to promote sustainable development if the national budget or the public budget is consumed by the foreign debt service. To fight the climate change offers us an opportunity to rethink financing models, trade, and development. The energy transition cannot bring back again the exploitation relationship of the colonial past. We need solutions that diversify and add value to the production of the developing countries. The most evident signal that the planet is becoming a place with more inequality is the growth of hunger and poverty. And this is unacceptable. Although its magnitude, these problems are not treated with the urgency that they deserve. the emissions of the 1% richest part of the world population are 100 times higher than the 50% poorest. As the Kenyan environmentalist Wangari Maathai, winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, we, quote, "We would like to put the blame on the poor for the destruction of the environment, but frequently the powerful ones, including the governments, are the true responsible," end of quote. We have sustainable forms to enhance the agricultural output, create income, and offer social protection. And this was what we discussed in the Amazon Summit meeting in the city of Belém in Brazil, in the Amazon region. And this is what we want to discuss with the other countries that have tropical basins like Congo and the Borno-Mekong. Brazil will take over the chair of the G20 in December, and we want to put back the inequality reduction as the core of the international agenda, to reduce inequalities. We cannot do that without greater representation from Africa. So that's why we advocate the entrance of the African Union as member of the G20. Now, with my trip to South Africa, and then I will follow to Angola and to São Tomé and Príncipe, I intend to open a new cooperation agenda between Brazil and Africa. Let's go back to our universal vocation and rebuild our historical ties with the developing countries. Prosperity is only full when it is shared. The presence here of dozens of leaders from the global south shows that the world is much more complex than the mindset that came from the World War, the Cold War, that some wants to reinstall. And instead of following the rationale of competition that imposes automatic alignments and that will foster mistrust, we have to strengthen our collaboration within the global south. The world with welfare and well-being for all is only possible if we have an international order that will be more inclusive and more solidarity. Thank you very much.
Your Excellencies, heads of state and government, colleagues, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to express my gratitude for the South African chairship for the arrangement of this representative summit of the BRICS Plus outreach. This format of communication is of utmost importance. It offers us a great opportunity to discuss in substance the relevant topics of mutual interest with those countries who largely share the attitudes of the